Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Supriya Raja, and I am the founder of the Empowered Parenting. Well, today's video is something that I would like to address because I get to hear from so many parents that, well, Supriya, you're saying that you develop, get your child interested in reading, get your child improve their reading fluency, read your child, but my child completely refuses to read. My child doesn't like to read. What do I do there? Well, I do. While I can understand this is a tough situation because when we try to force our children to read something, there is a lot of resistance. They don't want to do something they are not interested in doing. So, you know what the key element here is interest. They haven't had the experience of actually being read to, or they haven't had the experience of having the joy of keeping a book in the lap and looking at the pictures. When a child doesn't even have that experience or has had very, very limited experience, the child is not going to be interested. Also, there's some the probability that you probably had forced a child previously to sit for reading session or force a child to read. So when there's a lot of forcing, there is going to be a lot of resistance. When there is no interest developed, there is going to be resistance. That is for sure. So the key element here is to develop interest in your child towards reading. Because even for us, we don't like something, we don't want to do something, we aren't going to be motivated to do that, right? Likewise for our child or children too. So now coming back to how to develop an interest in your child towards reading, when your child is not even interested in reading, not even looking at a book, I would say don't shove a book into the child's lap or don't pull the child into your lap to sit for story reading session or bedtime reading session when the child is even not even ready for that. Instead, do exactly what our grandmothers used to do, right? Many times, if you see grandmothers, even I would say our own grandmothers, if you remember, not everyone, some of them did have a book, maybe, but not everyone had books in the hands. They would just narrate stories in the most fascinating way. Or even if they had a book in the hand, they wouldn't push the child to sit on the lap and read along. They would just read a book with the child sitting beside them, but reading in the most fascinating, the most creative way that the child would automatically get the interest, the curiosity to know what's next in the story. So it all depends on how you present a story to the child, whether you're reading to your child, even if the child is not sitting in your lap, reading to your child, or you're just telling a story without a book. So you don't have to force anything. If the child doesn't want to have a book in the hand or on the child's lap, do not force it. Probably you can have the book in the hand, or if not, you don't even have to have a book. Just recite, just tell a story in the most creative way. I'm sure many of us have heard many stories which we can also duplicate to our children. So just emulate what our grandparents used to do, is like narrating stories in the most interesting way, in the most dramatic way. So the child starts imagining the story, the child starts visualizing the story, picturizing the story in his or her own mind. That is number one step to getting the child to actually look at print. Because you know what? Children actually learn or even start reading. The first thing is they do it in images, which is called in as a terminology as logographic. So children learn first logographically, or basically learn from they first imbibe reading through images. So even if you don't have a book, the print in the form of a book in hand, it's fine. Just recite stories, just tell stories. They just get amazing images in their mind about what you're trying to say, about your story. So you're actually creating the interest, you're creating that story in the child's mind by weaving the story in a lot of twists and turns, a lot of suspense, making it the most dramatic story ever. And yes, when you're doing that, also ensure that you're using intonation, expression, so the child is also going along with you. The next thing is start small. Now, this can happen if the child is having a lot of attention issues as well. You see that your child is not willing to sit beyond a couple of minutes for a very calm session for reading. Because when you say reading a story to the child will have to sit in a place, right? Now the child may not want to sit in a place. The child is getting restless. Just so start small. Just maybe read for 5 minutes. Just read 1 or 2 pages, but in the most interesting way, in the most dramatic way. Maybe just for 5 minutes or even 3 minutes. It doesn't matter. Start very small, because that itself, slowly when you're done doing it consistently, will start developing interest and curiosity in your child's mind. So you're not forcing anything, you're not doing anything, you're not trying to do something which creates resistance from your child, but you're creating in a very natural way, in a very organic way, the interest and curiosity in your child towards the concept of reading. Now, the next thing you can do, especially when your child is pretty young, like 4 years, 5 years, within 6 years, suspense creation magic. What is that? That is, you're not reading the entire story. Just read to the point where, something terrible is going to happen to one of the characters, or something really fun is going to happen to one of the characters. Basically at a point you're pausing when there is some twist coming up in the story. And then you tell your child, we'll read this next day. So there now the child is filled with curiosity as to what's happening in the story, what's happening next. Yes, your child may not be able to read it because the child is still maybe 5 years or 6 years, or they're still beginning to read. So you're creating a suspense in your child to know what's next. So you can for sure be ensured that the next day when you're telling, come, let's do this reading session, they will be very excited to know what's happening next. So this suspense creation magic, do try it. It has worked a lot. It has worked for my child as well, and many parents who have done this particular strategy for their child as well. Now, if you're having older kids, like for say 8 years or even 9 years, they are much older, so you really cannot be making them sit in your lap and reading to them. And there are many situations, many instances where older children of this age are also resistant to a reading, because they haven't probably been ingrained into the habit of reading, or they haven't been exposed to the beauty, to the comfort of having the book in the hand and having the experience of having the joy of reading. So in such a situations, you don't have to necessarily get the child for bedtime stories. They aren't going to be coming, right? They are already like 8 years, 9 years. Instead, start having discussions on various topics of, it could be related to environment, it could be related to history, it could be related to anything, science, it could be anything, or even any of their interests or their hobbies. If you want, if you want to start off a conversation, you can start a discussion on that also. When you start having discussion, they may put their inputs, you can put their inputs. Slowly you can also tell them, okay, if you want to know more about this topic, well, I have a book on this. Because these days you do get child-centric books on various topics, whether it's history, whether it's science fiction, whether it is non-fiction, whatever. Okay, you get various books even in that age group of say 8 years, 9 years. Okay, so you can tell them that yes, you can start on a conversation on a particular topic, wherein which you already have bought a book, or you're deciding to buy a book, but you've not introduced the book directly to the child because the child is resisting reading. So you introduce in the form of discussion, get the child interested in the topic, and then slowly, maybe after a couple of days of having discussion, introduce the book to them. So they start looking at the books, So that is a very powerful way of getting a child interested to reading. Then they will slowly, when you're doing this multiple times on various topics, you will see that even a child of that age of 8 years, 9 years, actually reducing the resistance towards reading and telling you that, okay, let's go to the library or let's go to the bookstore. I want to buy a book on this topic. I want to look at a book on this topic, or I want to also look at a blog on this topic. Okay, so this is a very powerful way of creating an interest in older child. Well, I would say as a warning at this stage, please steer clear of audiobooks and ebooks just for now, because I'm not completely against ebooks or audiobooks, because that is part of our present generation, right? It's happening. It's a part of our present day. We all are into some, either one or two of our books are in audio format or in an ebook format. But I would say when you're trying to get your child interested in reading, our focus isn't that. So we don't want to ruin that, that experience a child can get by having a hard copy of a book in his or her lap and experiencing the joy of reading a real book vis-a-vis looking at his computer screen or a tablet or an iPad and reading a book there. Right now that is not the focus. So for a while, until a child gets hooked on to reading, hooked on to books, don't introduce this or discourage this. Once a child has gotten to the habit of reading books, then slowly you can actually even get an ebook or an audiobook on Audible. That's fine at that stage, but not when you're trying to develop an interest, develop the habit of reading. Don't do that at this stage immediately. Now, I would say yes, as a parent, we do so many things, but let me tell you, children emulate what they see. So if you want your child to be actually getting drawn to reading and reading books, getting interested in reading, you better walk the talk, which means that you also need to be interested in reading, at least if not being a voracious reader yourself, at least to an extent, yes, you have to be also developing an interest in reading yourself. If not, this is a time for you also to get into this habit of beginning to read books of your interest. You can start with anything that you like, whether it is finances, whether it is history, whether it's politics, whatever. There are various articles and books. You can get started, right? So yes, you also need to walk the talk, because when they see that their parent is also buying books, their parent is also enjoying having a book in their hand when they're free, let me tell you, there's very high possibility that your child is also going to be reaching out to book when he or she is bored, and not just always going on to YouTube and not just going on to, watching TV all the time. Right. So if you're finding this very, very powerful, and I would suggest try this. If you can try all the strategies, great, or just try with one strategy and see how it is, and then let me know in the comment box how it all went. I would also recommend you or encourage you to join my Facebook group, where I keep posting a lot of value content into the group, which is called the Empowered Parenting Hub. And if you want to know more, basically how to get my child to be drawn to reading, how do I contribute to my child becoming a curious reader, how do I contribute my child to become a lifelong learner through books, and obviously successful also, because you know what, most successful people are readers. So if you want that, please get into my masterclass, register for my masterclass. The link is provided below. You can come, and yes, there I'll be giving you 3 secrets exactly how you as a parent can get empowered, and how you as a parent can actually get your child to be interested in reading, actually become a lifelong reader and a learner, right? So until my next video, have a great day, try these strategies and let me know. The link for my masterclass I'll be giving in the description box, and also a link for my Facebook group I'll be giving in the description box. You can click and register. So until my next video, all the best and have a great day.